what's the other thing that we're looking for? The qualitative slide.
Set the smoothness.
Smoothness.
Arc motion.
That's kind of smooth.
Making sure the legs stay on the table.
Let's not be redundant.
That would be
timing?
form, timing, initiation and timing. So initiation, timing, and strategy. And then below that I wrote smoothness, that's kind of strategy.
Oh, yes.
Okay? So, what do we want to initiate this motion?
What was the motion? What do you need?
Pre-firing of what?
Transabs.
Transabs. What do we want to fully perform this motion?
Rectus.
Rectus. And what will happen if the rectus performs the motion?
She'll come right up.
What motion? Yeah, flex the lumbar spine. Yeah. that was a more obvious answer than what it sounded like. But. All right, so go for it.
Start up 5. Show them what you got.
Okay, slowly. Stop.
Legs are coming up.
Come down.
So
Okay.
strategy is like,
What is the strategy here? Well, first I can palpate. Right? What am I palpating here? Oh, no, I'm not thinking over psoas.
Oh, rectus.
So no, not
Common tendon of the
what?
oblique.
What? That's good. No, not that low. What muscle should pre-fire? Transabs. So what am I palpating? Transabs. Okay. All right. Now, start to go.
how hard are you pushing? Just like general pressure?
Just palpating.
Okay, just
Yep.
palpating.
Come down. So that lets me know. Now go ahead and finish your maneuver. Go ahead. Up.
What?
All right, you're right there.
Oh.
Because that was how you finished. You even gave a little pop-up before. Come down. Okay. And now come up. All right. Now, what is happening here?
My arms.
Flexion?
Hip flexion. All right. So what muscle is taking over here? Psoas. And there's a dominant hip flexion component. Now the psoas, go ahead and lay down. Oh, I'm going to tire you out. The psoas can flex the lumbar spine. But if you start to see immediate hip flexion, and what will hip flexion look like?
Thighs coming
The
up.
lifting.
Thighs coming out, which is hip flexion, or
Lumbar curve.
well, the lumbar curve would be lumbar flexion, so it'll be okay. But when it flexes the hips, what happens?
Anterior pelvis.
Yeah, so it won't anterior the pelvic tilt because you're already flexed, but the pelvis will go forward on the hips. So in other words, hip flexion can happen from below or above. All right, so let's watch the pelvis and the thighs. All right, go for it. Right? So is this a proper manual muscle test? No. No. Does it look impressive? And could someone have just walked away from this saying, man, you have awesome abs?
I do.
Right? Now, let's do it the right way. Now, keep your pelvis steady. Okay, you're not letting this come up. And now slowly start to curl up.
She clears it.
Come back down. Because you do have impressive abs. But what we're looking for is the timing here. So slowly come up. So immediately, actually, there is a subtle thing happening here.
Oh, God, here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So watch from the side here. Now slowly start to come up. Right there.
So those are firing to try to start it up.
So she is initiating with the psoas, and we are getting a big push out of the rectus abdominis. So we are getting an altered strategy. This is a hip flexor strategy. So now tilt your pelvis back and forth.
This is why the sit-up test is stupid in gym
This
class.
is why the sit-ups test is stupid in gym class. Absolutely. Okay, start to come up. Stay there. Okay, much better. Come down. Now, so we didn't go into extension. We stopped her from flexing through the pelvis, and we tried to target the abdominals a bit more. Now that's a lot, and she's really good at following directions. So, bend the knees for me, and place your heels about here, toes up. Okay, now toes up. Yeah, good. So now what you're going to do is you're going to press your heels into the ground as if you're sliding towards that side of the bed, but don't really slide. You're just going to press a little bit. You're going to keep your pelvis where it is. You're going to keep your toes up, and you're going to, all at the same time, you're going to keep toes up, and you're going to press as if you're going towards that side of the bed, and then start to curl up. Okay, ready, go. Oh. So you guys couldn't see it, but what do you guys think? Down.
You're locking it.
How'd that feel?
I guess a little different. I feel it making it straighter in my back a little bit.
Okay, and did it feel easier or harder than the other way?
Easier or harder than the other one?
Yep.
I guess easier. I feel like I'm pushing down here though. Is
You are.
that Is that
Yep,
right or
that's
wrong?
okay.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
All right,
So
so
I'm not, I feel like I'm not.
look
yeah,
from
I'm
the
not
sides.
so much.
I will not get it.
now tilt your pelvis back and forth. Relax a second. Now, all at the same time, press through the heels as you're sliding towards the head of the bed and curl up.
Oh,
Down.
goodness.
That was beautiful. Okay, down. Now, straighten your legs out. Tilt your pelvis back and forth. Forget everything you just learned. And curl up. See it?
Yeah.
So, rectus abdominis, impressive abs no matter how you look at it. All right? But the movement pattern strategy, the rectus abdominis popped up. So she wasn't getting a good pattern firing of trans abs and then the obliques to back up the power muscle. So this is supposed to be a strength test, but we're already looking at some of the motor control timing aspects to this. Now what I showed you with the knees bent is what's called the Yanda crunch, because Yanda invented it. Bend your knees.
So you're taking the hip flexors.
So
out
I'm
of the
taking the hip
equation.
flexors out of it. Now, so in gym class when we do this,
I could go on for days, guys.
what are we letting her do?
Hip flexor.
We're letting her grab her hip flexors and just power up with her hip flexors. So what Yanda said is, if we do an extension synergy, pressing through the heels as if you're going to slide up, but don't let them slide up, you are inhibiting the hip flexors. So the goal is not the extension synergy. The goal is to shut down the flexion synergy so that we can isolate the abs. And what we saw here is that she does have good timing. There was good trans abs firing. She curled up. She used rectus, absolutely, but it didn't pop out. The rectus was able to really engage. Everything worked in good synergy in order to get a good crunch. This would be the way to continue to train because it would be a better strategy this way. But either way, it's still impressive.
What grade would you give that if you had to bend the knees?
So the thing is, we're still held to the manual muscle test classification that you were taught in basic. So essentially, I don't know the answer to that. But what I'm showing you are some of the nuances of how we can get some more in-depth assessment. Okay.
Would you assign this as like a breakout exercise then? Like
This is
even
yes,
if- Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Where you progress by straightening the legs.
So you could progress by straightening the legs if they carried over the timing. So I'd rather have her do this, and then what we could do is, so this was supposed to be the abdominal assessment, but if we were going to look at the obliques, then we could take a look at that as well, because maybe there is an asymmetry from left to right. So crossing here, and now press as if you're going to go that way, come up just a little bit, and now rotate so you bring the right shoulder towards the left hip. And now we're checking out the obliques, down, and then come up and do the other way. Okay, so one of the things that we're looking for, you can come down, is we're looking for the strength of the obliques as they can rotate without collapsing. So you look at the rib angle. Now it will come down a little bit, but essentially we want her breathing. We want the rib angle to stay decently wide. We don't want it to collapse down, but that she can still engage the obliques. So we could do further muscle testing, strength testing to look for asymmetries by utilizing this. But then ultimately we would want her to not have to use the synergy pattern and be able to curl up into either flexion or obliques to carry the pattern over.
Yeah, because functional wise, yeah, I was just thinking you could, yeah, this is functional. It's like for doing thing.
Well, you could argue that integrating the synergy with it is still functional because we do it functionally. But either way, this is a non-functional test and a non-functional exercise. But it can be a significant strengthening exercise if we need it. But you can see how if someone didn't have impressive abs with every single test, that they could compensate and hide stuff. And when you really broke it down, you could reveal a weakness that actually is present. Okay? So try that, and what we'll do is I'll say you're also doing what you see up there is the oblique test.
So essentially, am I planking incorrectly? This is my stabilization.
No, you're
Like,
plank-
I'm just
you-
using my power.
I didn't check plank, but
Well, yeah, no, but that's what I do. That's what I'm saying. It's intense in like terms of like not turning on my stabilizer.
no, but you do turn them on. Okay? So in other words, you have impressive abs no matter what test we just did on them.
Okay.
But your strategy when your legs are straight is hip flexor dominant. So there might not be anything wrong with plank, or maybe you are over hip flexing with plank, but this was a movement exercise. So the question would be, in movement, do you utilize your hip flexor strategy over your abdominals? Yeah. So you probably have good endurance, you have good strength. I didn't check endurance, but it looks like you have that. So those areas are good, but how are you coordinating in function?
Gotcha.
Right, so if you kept crunching that way, that would reinforce the hip flexor pattern, so that wouldn't be a
I see. But if I do a plank and I do like an alternating.
well, that's what, when we do stability assessment, we'll see. Because that is a different
That
animal.
is, yeah.
Yeah, because especially in plank, we do want hip flexors, but it's an isometric thing. Right, so I would be more curious about your dynamic stabilization strategy rather than your plank strategy. All right, so mountain climbers or plank with leg movements, that would be the curious one.